The crew at Brewers Publications is pleased to announce the release of Brewing Local, American-grown beer by the great Stan Hieronymus. Join Stan in an exploration of local flavor using cultivated and foraged ingredients. Brewing Local will hit stores in September. If you're a member of the American Homebrewers Association, get your copy at 40% off the cover price during the pre-sale, August 15th through the 29th. Learn more at brewerspublications.com. Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, August 11th, 2016. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, the second part of our visit to the home of the Mad Fermentationist, Mike Tonsmeire. Mike shares a split-batch experiment dosing a funky beer with 5 different kinds of honey. If you're new to home brewing and would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. And if you buy any of our DVD combos, you get a free Basic Brewing bottle opener. And don't forget to get a copy of our Brewer's Logbook. You can use it to log and track up to 50 batches of beer. You can follow me on Twitter. My username is Basic Brewing, all one word. We also have a Basic Brewing Radio and Basic Brewing Video page on Facebook at facebook.com/basicbrewing. Thanks again to everybody clicking on the Amazon.com associate link on our basicbrewing.com site. Whenever you think of Amazon shopping, think of us first and click on our associate link on basicbrewing.com. It won't cost you any extra, and you'll be helping us to bring you the show, and we greatly appreciate your support. We also have associate links for Brew Your Own magazine and the American Homebrewers Association on our site as well. You can find our Basic Brewing iPhone app on iTunes, our Android app on Amazon.com. We have a Windows Phone app. We're on the BlackBerry Podcast Directory. We're on the Stitcher app, and we're on Google Play Music as well. If you want to put a tip in our tip jar, some coinage in our guitar case, you can go to basicbrewing.com/support, and thanks to everybody who's done so already. Let's take a look into the mailbag, shall we? Mike from Massachusetts writes, I'm surprisingly up to date and was listening to the 8-4 interview with Chris Colby. I heard his tongue-in-cheek reference to sour IPAs. I'm not sure if he hasn't seen them, but around 2-year-old Hermit Thrush Brewery in Brattleboro, Vermont, has been making Green Street Sour IPA with wild yeast for over a year. Well, there you go. Appreciate that, Mike. Of course somebody's brewing a sour IPA. That would be a fun one to taste. We attended a presentation of hoppy sour beers, or I guess you could call them Hauer beers, that hoppy sour beers that Mike Tonsmeire gave at HomebrewCon back in June. They couldn't be classified as sour IPAs. I don't think they weren't nearly bitter enough, but the hop flavors, along with the tartness, played very well with those. Tony in Ottawa, Kansas writes, I listened to your podcast, and I thought I would send you a suggestion based on a beer I've been making lately. It's a smash beer with 10 pounds of two-row and 2 hop additions. I used Northern Brewer. At the racking into secondary, I added half a gallon of Juicy Juice Mango and left for a week. I used SO4 yeast. It has nice, clean, refreshing taste with just enough mango on the back end. Try it. That also sounds tasty. I'd like to do some fruit additions, for example, to the low-gravity 100% rye tart beer that I brewed a bit ago. There is still enough summer left for a fun, drinkable beer. And today I'm planning on bottling my Blackberry Pilsner that I talked to Chris Colby last week about. It's turning out fun. It's got a nice, fun color. If nothing else, it's going to look pretty. Speaking of fun, in the next day or so, I'm going to post an episode of Basic Brewing Video where Steve cooks up a sous vide steak to go along with a hopped mead. Or it's a sizer, actually, a hopped sizer. Steve used his electric brew-in-a-bag system that he got from our sponsors, Desiree and Dave of High Gravity in Tulsa. And you'll remember that Steve has the smaller system that is 120 volts and can brew up to 5 gallons of beer. It's perfect for this application. He heated up some water in the high-gravity system to 130 degrees Fahrenheit, or 54 C, and we put a couple of ribeye steaks in there that had been vacuum sealed. And we left them in there for around 90 minutes. That way, the steak all the way through was 130 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the target temperature that Steve picked for that, to be that level of doneness for the steaks. And then, after we took them out of the system, it only took about a minute or so on each side on a charcoal grill to turn out perfect steaks that were done perfectly all the way through. Amazing. And of course, the high-gravity system is perfect for this because the electronic brewery controller held our target temp easily. So, whether cooking a sous vide steak, holding kettle souring wort at temperature for several days, or even brewing up a tasty batch of beer, the high-gravity electric brewing systems are extremely versatile and useful. Check out all the electric brewing systems at highdgravitybrew.com, and be sure to check out our video episode coming out in the next day or so. highdgravitybrew.com. Okay, I'm mixing in episodes that we recorded in Baltimore and the D.C. area when we went out to HomebrewCon in June, and this is the second part of an afternoon we spent at Mike Tonsmeire's house. He's the author of American Sour Beers and the Mad Fermentationist blog. And this time, Steve Wilkes, Andy Sparks, and Bob Stimsky helped Mike and me taste a split-batch experiment where a funky beer was combined with 5 different and tasty honeys. Here we are. We're sitting around the Tonsmeire dining room table. This is part 2 of our conversation. This is a honey experiment. We've got 5 different kinds of honey in front of us. And we're sipping on an interesting beer. What have we got?
So I love the idea that home brewers can do things that commercial brewers can't. I think home brewers are always so obsessed with what they can't do. They can do step mashes, they can do decoctions, they have this temperature control, they have access, they have economies of scale, they have first pick of the hops. They start worrying less about what you can't do and worrying about what you can do that commercial brewers would love to do. And one of those things is using stupid amounts of ingredients that there aren't stupid amounts of available. So this beer was brewed relatively, bland base beer, some pale malt. There's probably some wheat in there. Who knows? Fermented with East Coast yeast, Flanders Ale blends, ECY 002. And this is actually, if you go back to the Gordon Biersch episode, the first barrel we pulled from was actually the microbes from this beer, this actual beer. And so it's a strain that is not going to be super funky. It's not going to be super aggressive. And that was what I wanted, because I want to dose in to 5 different gallons of this, split into 1 gallon fermenters, 5 different varietal honeys. And all told, between the amount I add to the secondary fermenter and the amount that I use for priming, about 30% of the gravity came from honey. So we're not, I think, technically Braggot is 51%, but this is probably more than honey beer. And there's certainly some commercial honey beers, from what I've heard, that there's 1 ladle full of honey in a 30-barrel batch, because any amount of honey, you can put honey on the label. But this is a beer where I wanted to really showcase interesting varietal honeys. We've all seen orange blossom, we've all seen clover, we've all seen some of these more common ones that you can get at the grocery store. But I got raspberry, blueberry, gallberry, sourwood, and acacia honeys. And these are the sort of honeys that a commercial brewery is going to have a hard time getting a couple 100 pounds of. I'm sure it exists, but it's not, it's something you're really going to have a relationship with a particular, apiarist. I don't know what the apiary is.
Beekeeper.
With a hive, and you'd really have to put some effort into getting these, and maybe it wouldn't be worth it. And so the fun of this one was, to me, sure, these honeys were $8, $9, $10 for 12 ounces. That's a decent amount of money. But honestly, you go out and you get a decent double IPA, it's probably $8 or $9, and this is going into a gallon of beer. And I had enough left over of each of the honeys that we're going to be able to give them a sniff. I'm not telling these guys what the beers are at first. We're going to sort of talk about the beer a little bit, and then we'll reveal what it is, smell the honey, and go from there.
And the beer itself, the first beer that we have, it smells. It's not. I wouldn't say that it's tart or sour, but it's funky. It's got some barnyard things going on
in the nose. So I think it's certainly sour when you take a sip. It's not a huge sourness.
No, it's not as tart as say the beers that we were tasting this morning. I don't think the Flanders Reds is, it's kind of an Orval kind of funkiness, kind of a barnyardy kind of a thing, or at least Orval at a certain stage of maturation in the bottle. It's clear. It's kind of golden. I'm going to start with Bob.
I agree with what everybody said already. Oh, this is good. It's very good. Mine is very clear. It's crystal clear. I can't say anything more than you did. It's a little bit of barnyardy, and I wouldn't have any problem drinking this all day long.
Do you have any guesses, or is there any indication that you're getting from about any of these honey varieties?
None whatsoever. I've already forgotten what they smell like. It's been more than 15 minutes, but I'd be interested. I'm looking for that gallberry. I'm looking for it. I haven't found it in here. I hope.
Auntie?
I think it's really delicious. It's got a nice perfuming nose. It has that little funk that I think everybody's mentioned, but it also has this kind of bright little, almost citrusy kind of thing going on it too. I smelled all the honeys, and they all smell different, but it's really hard for me to put my finger on what's different about each one. They're kind of intense, but and I guess honey, is not something that I'm specialized in, obviously, so it's a little difficult.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. The honey really comes through very nicely in this beer. I really get a big alcohol nose in it. It's not a hot alcohol,
I think it's probably 7.5 or 8%.
Yeah,
and that honey ferments out.
And so I'm like Andy. It's like I can't put my finger on which one of these is. It's not so pronounced. I can say, well, that's definitely blueberry or whatever. But if I had to guess, I almost want to say this is maybe the acacia because it's so pronounced. I'm probably wrong, but if I had to guess, then that's what I would guess at the moment.
Do we want to have forced guesses?
I think and just to add to what you're saying, it looks as close to the color of the acacia honey to me. The other ones are darker.
I'll say that the colors are all the same.
And I assume that's probably going to happen as we dilute them, as they're diluted. But to me, if I look at them, that's the one I would say it looks the most like.
Well, and the other reason I say that's because I've brewed with enough of the honeys that I can get my hands on. And this honey is so pronounced. It came through so beautifully. Maybe it's just the way you used it, but the way it came through, and of those honeys, the acacia and the blueberry were the two that seemed to be very, for my nose, because all I did was smell them, but they really were really pronounced honeys in a different way. So,
yeah,
That's the dirty ones.
He's reusing toothpicks. Calm down, Bob.
I just got to try the blueberry. I didn't try it before.
As this warms up, I was going to say acacia.
Feel free to take another sniff if anyone needs a confirmation or
acacia. It was the most kind of not odd. Well, maybe odd smelling, kind of woody.
The acacia, I won't say what this is, but the acacia during fermentation was by far the weirdest.
yeah.
Did you say acacia is mesquite?
It's related to mesquite. This is Himalayan Indian acacia, which is not mesquite. American acacia honey is mesquite, I believe, or black locust, or there are a bunch of those. They're all kind of in the same family. Do you want to know what it is?
Sure.
Yeah.
Steve was real close. It was the blueberry.
It is the blueberry.
Oh.
I thought it was one of the two.
To me, the blueberry has it's a real fruitiness to it, but it's not distinctly blueberry in any way.
Yeah.
It really is a nice. To me, I like this one. It has that nice fruitiness that comes through. It goes well with the funkiness.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be interested to see what you guys think of the other ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is. It is fruity. There's a fruity character in there.
I think in my reviews of this one, when I wrote it up, I thought maybe this honey would have done better in a slightly darker beer, maybe a Flemish red or something like that, because that fruitiness going with maybe some maltiness or something like that would have been nice.
I mean, it's very subtle. It's not like drinking a fruit beer. It's not like drinking a blueberry beer.
And to be clear, this isn't, they sell like Honey 6 are infused with blueberry flavoring. This is honey harvested by bees that were moved to pollinate a blueberry patch or a blueberry farm or whatever it is. There's no actual fruit in any of these. It's solely the character of the honey.
Right.
Interesting.
We shall rinse. I think your first appearance on the show, didn't you send? Was it a hop experiment that you did? You did a small batches.
Yeah, well, it was
late
a
hopping.
5-gallon batch that I split into 5 1-gallon. That one was more of a pain in the ass because that one I had to split on the hot side. I made the wort and then I was putting it and boiling it for 20 minutes with a hop variety, and then I've gotten a lot lazier in my experiments over the years.
But that one was really an eye opener. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember that, but we tasted those beers like, oh my goodness, these are such delicious, hoppy, flavorful beers.
I remember you saying after we went off the air, after you stopped to record, thank goodness those beers weren't terrible. I don't know what we would have done. Yeah.
I say that every time.
I think really the key with this batch, the miracle, is that I primed with honey, which is something I've always told people not to do. Don't use a variable sugar to prime with. You're a lot better off using table sugar, glucose, just because you know exactly. You weigh it out exactly. Honey has a variable amount of water, a variable amount of fermentability, and all these actually carved up okay. I went on the low side. None of them are super overcarbonated, which was really my concern. I'd rather a little undercarb than shooting out of the bottle.
Steve primes with honey a lot.
That's what I use. For a 5-gallon batch, I use a half a cup of honey. Just overhead.
And what's always nice, though, if you're using the same honey and you get used to it, then you know
I've
what
never
works.
had a carbonation problem at all.
Ooh, I have my guess already. Anybody else?
I think, and this is the fun thing, though, about trying a bunch of beers, the split batch this way, that you really can see the difference. And I don't think that this beer is necessarily any more distinct, but it really comes across very differently than the previous one.
Yeah, it's a much stronger flavor, in my opinion.
Are you just avoiding telling us what it is?
I want to give I don't want to prejudice anybody.
So we went from a 20% chance to a 25% chance. As we eliminate, it'll become easier. The last one, everyone better get right, or you're cut off.
Yeah, we'll save that for last.
Okay, wait. Let's number these. Let's number these 1, 2, 3, and 4. Close your eyes, Steve. I'm gonna put my guess down here.
Very good, James. James has got it.
Okay, now I get it. Close your eyes.
But
do 1, 2, just do the number.
1, 2, 3, or 4.
No,
that wasn't a one.
Your guess?
It's the Sonia Henning of guessing. No, I really didn't have any idea.
I thought that. Okay.
You picked it out?
Have you guys?
Nailed it.
He nailed it. Now everybody's getting into it. We know a friendly competition.
The gauntlet has been laid down.
I really like this one. This is one of my favorite ones.
This really kind of does taste like a fruit beer to me. It's got
not strong, not like some of those beers we were having at Blue Jack, but yes,
no. Not like 600 pounds of strawberries fruit beer, but a well done, nicely fruited beer. I think. Bob's shaking his head.
No, I can't tell the difference.
Andy's.
I would say that one, but
it's sourwood is Andy's guess. Incorrect. This is the raspberry honey. To me, it is a real like a light fruitiness. When this was young, it was like real cotton candy breakfast cereal kind of thing. I mean, that's calmed down, but it has, it maybe just that sour too helps the impression of fruit. Again, very different. If I had these blind, I'm not sure I would have been able to say this is raspberry beer, but it has a fruitiness, a light, bright.
Well, it helps that the blueberry was taken away. It would have been a toss-up for me between the blueberry and the raspberry, just because it just tastes like fruit. But boy, I could drink a lot of that.
And the fun thing about these is you learn that there are some fruit. You start with something relatively bland, and then I think this is a perfect honey for a pale beer. It has a bright, light, fruity flavor. I think it complements. It doesn't need to play off against darker flavors. It's a fun beer, and you can only get so far smelling the honey itself. Once it ferments and interacts with other things, it's going to change.
And you said it was 30% of the fermentables, right? But did you talk about how the honey got into the beer? I can't remember.
I sort of mentioned it in passing. So I added it. So I did primary fermentation, no honey, all together, and then I split it into 1 gallon fermenters with the honey.
Okay.
At that point, and I think honey is one of those things that's so delicate and it's so easy to chase away, whether with heat or with fermentation. The later you can do it, the better. And that's one reason I used it for priming, was even at that point, even just adding honey, you're going to have more fermentation. You're going to blow off some of the aromatics. If you use it for priming, you're then putting that lid on and you are trapping every molecule of the honey in there.
Do you have to worry about yeast nutrients at all?
No, I don't think so. Particularly with these wild microbes, they're going to eat on whatever's there. And it had primary fermentation. It was, a moderate gravity all malt beer. So at that point, I'm not as concerned as you might be for a mead. And
to me, the funky character is more muted in this one than the first one.
Yeah, I agree with that. The only thing I would say is that they're different, and that to me is almost the most important thing. So, Michael was saying that you just play around with it. You find the honey that you like and that fits in your palate and your recipe. That's the important lesson here, I think.
Wow. So are we ready for the next one?
Sure. We can also just pause if
or we could pause if you want to. Do you want to finish that one? We can pause.
I can also give people a backup glass if they'd like to hang on to a particular one until. So we got the two glass. Ones that people would have any guess at what the real thing tasted like.
Okay, now we're down to 3. Then there were 3. This is the acacia, the sourwood, and the gallberry.
By far the weirdest one, I would say, so far.
Don't get fruit.
I'm not getting any little green apple.
Let it go.
Let it go. Wow, that's out there. I gotta be honest, at first it's like, whoa, that's just knocking me down.
Oh, yeah. This is a potent one.
Yeah.
And not what you think of as honey flavors to me.
No.
But as I've swirled it around and it's opened up a little bit, it's tamed a little.
Although, the more sips I take, the more kind of fruity it gets.
I think there's some fruitiness in there, and that is one of the tricks with something like this. I go back and forth with experiments of how pared down do you want the beer to be? Because honestly, if you wanted to really just taste how the honey would be, make a blonde ale, 10 IBUs, no finishing hops, super clean yeast, all, maybe a blend of Pilsner malt and American two-row, really neutral it out. But then at that point, how much are you learning? Unless you want to brew a honey blonde ale. Right. If you want to brew a honey sour beer, aren't you better off doing a honey sour beer and seeing how the honey works with those other flavors? And it might make describing it a little trickier, but these beers are so distinctly different in a way that escapes, in some ways, categorization. And to me, I think the world of beer needs more of that. There are too many of these beers that are almost... novelties. These beers that have some sort of extract flavorant in them, that it's chocolate flavored, but we're just adding this chocolate extract that is making it just smell like a candy bar. And beers like this, to me, are much closer to sort of that high end of food, where it's not about whacking you over the head with one single flavor. It's about nuance and depth, and not an escaping easy categorization, easy. Oh yeah, well that tastes like bacon. That's amazing. But is that really worth something?
Yeah, it's. I like it. I think it's not the funkiest one, but then I think the honey has some kind of weird characteristics, but but there's some fruitiness in there as well, and there's just a lot going on there. It's not as drinkable as the raspberry one, but I think it's interesting from a food standpoint.
Do we have any guesses on what this one is?
I'll go with acacia.
It's the third time.
Oh, for two. You just got to keep going. You don't want to miss.
The third time that Steve has guessed acacia.
I don't know. It's pretty tough. And honestly, I pick up the little bit of funkiness in this one, and I'm kind of struggling to pull that apart from the honey smells and the complexity of honey. I think what I'll do is I'll do what you're doing, and I'll pick the same thing I picked last time. I'm going to go with the sourwood this time, just because my odds will get better if I keep picking the same one.
That's right.
Monty
You
Hall.
got one out. You got a third, 33.3% chance there, Bob.
Well, I'm going to go with the acacia because I figure sooner or later he's going to be right.
Even a blind pig finds an acorn once in a while.
Yeah, no, it's very flavorful, and fruity, but I can't differentiate. I don't have that articulated palate that you gentlemen do.
Well, I don't either.
Well, my guess was going to be acacia too, just because it was that kind of weird. It's the weirdest smelling, and then just the weird character that I got at first that I'm not getting too much of now. But
Sadly, 0 for 4. Gallberry.
Oh, dang it! I was going to try that.
To me, it has a little bit of an herbalness, maybe that the other ones don't have. It's a very faint kind of smell, but
gallberry.
I'm not an expert on honey.
No,
Thanks, Steve.
and with anything like this, it's you can smell it right here. It's not about it's about knowing how it interacts. And honestly, I'm not sure how I'd do picking them out of a. Yeah, it doesn't smell anything like the gallberry.
No.
The gallberry is a much more classic honey aroma. It's
Okay, well, now we're down to sourwood and acacia. The sourwood, to me, that was the one that I said smelled like honeycomb, right? That was the most honey-smelling, generic honey-smelling.
I tried to make it easy. These last two, I think, are the most different. So we'll see.
You get a pour of the rinsey rinse there.
Thin.
Please, sure.
Okay, here we go. Let's see if somebody besides James can get one. So far, I think we're 1 for 12 on total guesses. 0 for 4 on gushers, though.
You're brave to be opening over your dining room tablecloth here.
Oh, it is not a fancy tablecloth. You may see some cat scratch marks on it at various points.
Steve's got cat scratch fever over there.
I do. I've got a salve, though. So it should clear up soon.
Oh, I've got a guess. First sip, I've got a guess.
Most carbonated by far, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Well, I got my guess locked in.
What did you want? What about this one is distinct to you, or just it smells or tastes like one of the honeys remaining, either the acacia or the sourwood?
Right. I'd say it tastes. It tastes like
the odds
one
be
of them
ever in your
smells
favor.
to me. And that's just my first initial reaction there.
Jeez. I have no hope. Because neither of them smell like this tastes to me. So it's. I was expecting to get a whiff of the honey and go, oh, well, that's it.
Yeah.
And I don't.
James seems confident, but maybe too confident.
Maybe just a little too.
Well, close your eyes, Steve. That's
All right.
number one. That's number two.
All right.
No!
Too confident.
Boom, 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 boom.
Well, you got the blueberry though.
Well, I got one.
Yeah, and you're the only one that got one.
Right?
Everyone's going to have their one on the next one.
Yeah.
I hope if you've
Yeah.
played along. And
Yeah.
I'll get
Yeah.
it. Hopefully everyone at home can get it too.
Yeah, I hope
I'll
everyone
get it
gets the
wrong.
last one.
Oh jeez. Dun, 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 dun.
Right, Bob.
You got to start with B.
You have a 50% chance.
I'm gonna go with the acacia because I don't know what. He's got to be right sooner or later. Oh wait, he might not pick it.
Right. I'm going with the sourwood. I figure might as well be consistent.
I'm gonna go with the acacia.
A point for Steve.
Yes, I knew you'd come through, Steve.
And Bob. He finally got it right.
James
I-
threw me the number 2 for sourwood.
Yeah. Well, it turned out to be a number 2 as well. Well, I got that first sip. I got honeycomb,
Yeah.
and
No,
that's what I smelled on the sourwood is that honeycomb
Yeah.
flavor.
This one has gotten better. This was for a while. It was sort of rubbery. It was not good in the fermenter, and even once it was in the bottle, it was kind of weird. And it's gotten better. It's definitely got some of that classic honey, but also maybe a little bit of more earthy, more.
It seems like I've read somewhere. I've never brewed with it, but it seems that I've read somewhere that acacia honey and mesquite honeys are not good braggot honeys.
And maybe at too much, too high a
Yeah.
level, or they're too distinct. Too
Yeah, it's like don't do that. Don't go there because it's
But
too...
something like buckwheat as well.
Yeah.
It can be a very nice addition to something in a blend or something, but it's not maybe what you want.
Yeah.
So concentrated in a traditional mead.
I'm getting a tiny bit of agave in there, just a teeny tiny bit, just on
Sort of
the- on the
citrusy
back end.
kind
Yeah,
of,
limey kind of a.
Don't make fun of the British.
Excuse me.
Well, the one thing I will say is that all of them have been very drinkable.
Yeah.
And the more I drink, the more drinkable they get, which is a phenomenon that I've never quite understood.
It's the beer glass goggles. Beer goggle. Okay, now it's all up to the. It's all up to the sourwood.
Although I really don't feel very confident at this point.
We'll see how distinct it still is. The sourwood to me was always, it really carried through that.
It's the most distinctive.
I don't know. It's the most just like that's a honey beer.
Okay.
We'll see. We'll see if it still is. The problem anytime you do a split batch with 5 gallons, you end up with 8 bottles of 5 different beers, and you want to do these sort of tastings, and so you end up burning through them.
Right.
And you kind of feel bad. Well, I have 3 of each of them. I don't just want to pull one bottle of one. I want to save that.
We did this with chilies one year.
Yeah.
We did 5 gallons, and I can't remember the chilies now, but it was really interesting.
Yeah, we did meads, didn't we? We
So we did 5 different,
Inspired by
Actual
your
hypertension,
experiments. I
too.
think. It's a feedback effect. Bob, do you have a guess on this one yet?
I'm going with the gall.
He's
This has got a softer nose. Feel free to fill your own joke in there. It's okay.
it's the gin blossoms.
But the others, some of the others, when I've taken that first nose hit, it's like holy crap.
Yeah.
But this one was very pleasant, very easy in the nose palate.
No, it's not particularly distinct. It's floral to me. It has some of that, just classic honey, and particularly in the finish after I sip, the lingering flavor is honey.
I think maybe the funkiness might be accentuated in this one, in that the honey characteristics are maybe more neutral. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
You can still taste honey, but it's not a certain kind of honey. It's just like honey.
Well, this was by far my favorite. I don't know why. It just is. It just according to my palate. But to be honest, Mike, all your honeys had a taste of mint to me for some reason, and I just drank some of my rinse water, and it was minty too. And I just realized I had a little toothpaste on my mustache. So when I was sniffing these beers. Ooh, very good.
And Bob's the guy that fell on his head and couldn't smell anything or taste anything for a few months. So,
Yeah, I'm not sure which honey I'm going to pick on this one. I'm still a little lost.
Going with that gallberry.
Right. Yeah. No, this is also very nice. I'm frustrated by my inability to pick out any of these flavors that anybody else can pick.
I think I agree with Bob. This is my favorite too. That I don't get the mint, but what I think that my thesis is that this one, the honey and the sour beer funkiness don't fight each other, and I did feel like in a couple of the earlier ones that there was a little bit of a struggle going on, and although I'll say that as they opened up and kind of aired out a little bit, that seemed to dissipate. But this one was completely pleasant immediately in every sense.
Yeah, no, it's so. Other than the people who thought this was the best, James and Andy, did you have favorites? Is this it? Was there another one that really jumped out to you as what you'd order a second pour of?
well, raspberry's my sentimental favorite because I picked it out. I got it right. No, this is good. I think it would be, honestly, between this and the raspberry, just because I got so much raspberry flavor out of that. And it's interesting that comes through the honey, and it doesn't actually have any raspberries in it. It's just all from what the bees drug off the flowers. But it's good. I like it. I like it a lot. It wasn't just smelling the honeys. It wasn't the standout. It was kind of I don't know what the cliche, but it was the ugly duckling. Maybe not the ugly duckling of the bunch, but it was the neutral duckling of the bunch. But it's really good.
I think this is where experimentation on your own really comes into it. That it's like a lot of ingredients. You can taste some malt, but until you've really brewed with it, you may not know how it's going to perform. You can have a handful of special B and go, ugh. But when you add 5% to a double, it adds that, once it's diluted out. And it's the same thing with honey. Once it's diluted out, you're going to get different notes. And I found the same thing with wine grapes, that, when you drink wine, you get that really concentrated flavor. But when you add wine grapes to beer, you start to get out some of those lighter, fruitier, brighter flavors. And, at a certain point, there's no substitute for trying it yourself at home.
Right. And if you were going to do this exact same experiment, except maybe start with an English mild or a porter or something, you might get a completely different result about what you thought was the best or not the best.
Yeah.
And a different yeast.
Absolutely.
From that experiment we tasted this morning from the 4 barrels, even the same yeast out of 2 different barrels had different or same organisms.
If it had more or less funk or more or less sourness, that might have pulled one of these into a better position. But for this beer, by chance, this honey and the raspberry, I think, are 2 of my favorites. I like the gallberry too, just for how weird it is. I think it maybe I liked it more than you guys, and maybe that's partly that I know what I'm tasting, and you can talk yourself into liking something. But that one, just the weird little herbal thing, and the honey and the sour, and it all kind of makes something to me that's like weird and distinct and fun. And this was a fun experiment to do. I'm always happy when to share my effort, because there's always so many times I can taste the same beers and have the same thoughts. Share them with a bunch of other people who can maybe learn a little something or lend their own opinions on how something tastes.
Awesome. Well, it's been fun.
Yeah.
Now we
nap.
Now we nap until the next thing.
I'm old and in a nap.
Well, thanks, Mike.
Of course. It's a pleasure as always, James. Hopefully you can make it back here again in 10 more years.
Once a decade.
I'll be here with my marijuana.
Well, thanks again to Mike, Steve, Andy, and Bob. What a fun day. Mike was very gracious to not only invite us into his home, but to also taxi us around to tasty spots around his town. There are 2 more visits from that day that are still coming up in the lineup, so be on the lookout for those. And a reminder as well, we have a new Basic Brewing video episode out. It may be out by the time you hear this. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to James at basicbrewing.com or just fill out the contact form at basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our support link where you can throw a couple of bucks into the tip jar by subscribing financially to our podcasts. Be sure to check out our DVDs, Extract Brewing and Partial Mashing, Stepping into All Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits. You can find them all on our site. You get a free Basic Brewing bottle opener with any DVD combo. And you can check out our Basic Brewing shirts in the store as well. You can find our logbooks where you can track and log up to 50 batches of beer. Check all of that out at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We greatly appreciate the support there. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the link are Packing for Mars, The Curious Science of Life in the Void, and Lionel, the Polar Express Disappearing Hobo Car. Thanks again, everybody. Remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping. We greatly appreciate your support. Don't forget you can also join the American Homebrewers Association or subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine through the associate links on basicbrewing.com. That's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dutson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.